my friends, John LaRuffa back again with another rule speed through, and today we're going to be taking a look at a more complex game that is a lot of fun, but it's also a big challenge to remember how to play if it's been a little while. And so let's take a look at Trickerion, the Collector's Edition. I'm going to explain all of the components or the things that come in here to play with a solo game. So I'm not going to spend any time on some of the modules that you can't play solo. I'm just going to talk about everything all included for the solo game with the AI opponent. So without further ado, let's speed through these rules.
Okay, so I've set this game up kind of in the middle of the game here. So it's sort of a pseudo setup, okay? Not 100% accurate probably, but try to get an idea of what the game state would be like in the middle. And so this is kind of a turn number 4 with the AI player. AI player has got a smattering of things already in play, and then so does the human player itself. So let's go over some components just quickly so that you know what you've got here. Remember, you have a main board here that has various different places. You've got the dark alley. We've got the market row. We have the downtown area, the theater area over here, and then also you have the academy area, which is part of the one expansion that you can play with. The additional thing here too is in the beginning we're also playing with the contraptions. So you got the contraption sideboard, you've got the assistant sideboard over here, and then one of your the apprentice sideboard, and then one of your assistants over here, and then the main board for the AI player is a little bit different, so we'll talk about that as we go through. And then there's the AI deck, which helps with the decisions. We'll get through these as we go and play and show the differences. The stack of components here for the different things that you need for your tricks. The dark alley row cards that allow for special planning, and then up here in the theater you've got your actual stage cards where you stage your tricks, and over here your bank of tricks that you can use. So that's kind of an overview of what you have in the game itself. So in this game, there's a lot going on. Obviously, there's a lot of handy play rates that they give you here, which really help kind of figure out what to do. So we're going to use that to kind of go through the gameplay. We'll do an overview first, and then we'll take each of the different actions that you can take, and then also talk about the AI as well. So the game begins with you rolling the dice for the different rounds. And as you remember with the dice rolls, you're going to roll all these dice over here. And when you do so, that's going to be what allows you to see that beginning market. So you're going to roll these dice over here, and then you're going to place each of them back in the particular components on the board. And as you also could remember, if you get an X like this, that kind of means that the operation is locked out, and so there's no way to do that unless you spend time with flipping the dice or re-rolling them. You're also going to spend, during this phase, you're going to re-roll any of these dice that do not have the previously re-rolled marker under it. So you can't re-roll this because you've already re-rolled it in the previous phase, but you could, for instance, roll this die right here, and then that would show you which of these spaces will be blocked for this current turn. So this would block here, this would block here, and then you're going to take one of those tokens and put it under there, showing you can't re-roll it again. So you're going to re-roll 2 of these things for the current round each time. And again, so this one blocks the 2 centers. Since they're already blocked, nothing happens, and we're going to put a don't re-roll token under there. And that is the roll dice phase. Then we're going to go to the next phase, which is set initiative order. Initiative order is always set by the person who is in the lead. The person in the lead will go in the lowest initiative in a 2-player game with the AI. That means position 3. And then the person who is, the highest on the track, so the one with the most score will go down here. And then the one with the least score, who is behind, which in this case would be the red player, which is our solo opponent, the AI, we will go in that spot right there. And so he would get the initiative order to go first. Then the AI always will be able to place, in the next advertising phase, which we'll go into right now, they will be able to place their poster and score points for it for free. So they're going to go ahead and put this down here, score the 2 points per the space, and then the human player has a decision to make. Do they want to spend $3 to advertise and get 2 points for it, or do they not want to? Depending on their cash flow situation, you make that decision. Then comes the assignment phase. The assignment phase is kind of half the meat and potatoes of the game, really. So that's when you're going to go through your cards, and you're going to assign, your regular or your specialty cards to these slots here. So when you make an assignment, for instance, like this, where you put this person in the dark alley, you're going to be saying that during the next phase where you're placing characters, you're going to place this character in the dark alley. And so you're going to choose to assign all these characters however you feel makes the most sense. Some of them might be with a specialty card, which we'll talk about. And then, the place where you choose to put them is where they're going to go. If you decide not that you don't want to put them there in the place characters, you can simply leave them there. You don't have to pay wages on them, but this is kind of the decision time to figure out when you're going to, or where you're going to put your different tokens during the place character phase. So after you place all of these, then the AI is going to flip over a card. If there's a card in that slot, they're going to discard it. Then with their cards over here, they're going to draw their card. They're going to look to see what's on the icon on the top. In this case, this icon gives you no choices. It makes you put this down here in this bottom slot so it matches that. That will set the different places where you're going to place the the cards for where they're going, and then also it will set the turn order for where you're going to place your characters in the next phase. Now, let's say you had drawn one of these cards here that has the red performance icon on it, as well as this. Then you have a choice to make. Depending on the number of tricks that you have and what's out on your board, you will either place this down here, or you'll place it up on the top one, and it'll change the posture of the AI from either being busy or being ready to perform. So basically it comes down to this. If the AI has one of these cards that has the icons on both, and it has at least one trick of the highest level that it can qualify for, so in this case it's 36 because we're already at this 53 spot for points, then it's going to place that card in this location, basically meaning that it's ready to perform like this, okay? In all other circumstances, it would put it down here. This can change depending on the situation in the game. If there is a spot where it is time for them to perform based on a couple of things. So for instance, if you slide the plan card up or down because of your fame changing. So if it goes up to the next spot and you're no longer in a spot where you're ready to perform, because let's say you crossed over a threshold from 16 over to the next threshold to 36, but you don't have a 36, then this would move down here and change the priority. So that can happen at any point. If a location is contested, that might change you as well. But you've got to be paying attention to that, and there's some nuances in the rules that you can kind of figure that out. So now, with this situation right here, you'll see that there's the standard cards, and then there's also one with a little bit of writing on it. That means that you're going to place a card that's a specialty card in that slot. So, for instance, we're going to be placing out these cards like this, as the card indicates, okay? But this slot right here, you need to be able to have a specialty card in that color. If you don't place anything, okay? If I did have one from a previous turn, then I would go ahead and I would place this specialty card right here. But again, that's only if I had one in my pile from a previous turn. With regard to the specialty cards, the AI does nothing with the text. They only use it for the activation bonus here. That's the only thing that these specialty cards will do to enhance the action. So the text is irrelevant. Once you place down these cards, then it's time for you to move to the next place where we're going to be placing characters. It should be noted that if there is a spot that's empty, you don't even have to place the card because there's nobody there. That sometimes will happen throughout the game. Also, it should be noted if the AI has more than 6 characters, the other additional hands are just going to stack up here, and they're only going to ever play 6 tokens throughout the game. So when it's time to place characters, you're going to look at the initiative order, and you're going to determine whether it is the red player or the solo players or your player's turn first to place. In this case, it would be the solo player who would be playing first. So you're going to look at this top area now to determine which character goes first. And in this case, it's going to be the character that's going to head to the downtown area. So you look at your board and you see, okay, this character right here is going to head downtown. Now, you put the character in basically the best space, right? The furthest to the left that's open. And then after doing that, you're going to see how many action points you have. In this case, it's 4. Then you have to go over with the AI to consult this massive chart and figure out what does 4 actions mean for the downtown. And depending on whether you're playing easy, medium, or hard, you will just see how many of these actions you can take. So in this case, if we're playing on normal, not medium, normal, you would take 2 actions based on the fact you have 4 lightning bolts. So that's 2 different things. And you would have to reference all of these preferences as you go through the game to see what they actually do. After taking the character placement for the AI, you would then take your turn, and you would decide which one you want to put down following the normal rules. So let's say I want to go ahead and go to the Dark Alley. I would take a look at this. I would grab this token right here, and I would place my Dark Alley token on either or. Obviously, I would take the better one because that makes sense. And then I would immediately carry out the action. So in this case, I have 3 activation or energies for the different actions I could take. So I would take those right away. It should be noted that the player, in most cases, has the opportunity to spend shards. The only place you can't spend shards to get additional actions, you can only do that once, is in this case right here, the theater. You cannot enhance and add additional actions to your turn because it's just not allowed. Okay, there are some ways that changes, for instance, in some of these almond tracks and things like that, which modify the game round with a specific effect for that entirety. But that is only for your player. The solo player will never do that. The AI will never spend shards to take those additional things. Now, you go back and forth placing tokens until both of you have completed placing them, and then it is time to move on to the next phase, which is the performance phase. Before we do the performance phase, though, I'm going to go through each of these locations and tell you what they do. So to keep things cleaner here, I'm not going to go ahead and put guys on these areas. I'm just going to explain the different icons of what happens here. So when you go to a phase, you get to spend that many activation points, so to speak, to any number of actions that you can afford. So you can take, a couple of buy actions, maybe a rush delivery, and then maybe an order action from beforehand or for the next turn. But if I was to go here with, for instance, a guy that has a +2, that would mean I would have 4 things to distribute throughout this. So what do these different actions do? This action allows you to buy 1 type of materials, up to 3 of those materials, or components, pardon me, and you have to buy them for this price. If you decide to put in extra actions, you can put in this to spend extra actions to subtract 1 from the total purchase that you've made through this action. So for instance, if I decided to buy 2 saws, okay, that would cost me 1 action to do it. It would be $4, but if I spent an additional 2 energy there to do it, I would shave 2 off of the total price, which would make it 2. So I would spend $2, then I would not take this from there. I would go to my pile, I would grab the saw, I would take 2 saws, and then I would put them on my board in a component spot, okay? So that would be one of these empty spots over here, for instance, and then I would have 2 saws, but actually, since I already have a saw, I would put them on top of the one I already have. You're always limited to 3, no matter what. That includes this spot over here. So if you remember, this particular assistant allows for you to have kind of an extra one no matter what. So that would be like I have 2 of these doves right now. if I decide not to buy here, or if I have more actions, I should say, I can also do a special rush delivery where I pay 2. I grab what I need that's not available in the actual market, and I put it over here. Now I can purchase this one immediately, but it costs me an additional $1 to do so versus the price over here. So it's an expensive way of getting things immediately. If I don't want to pay for it right away, I can put it in this spot right here, and at the end of the round, this will replace this, and this will replace this, and so on, just like the icons show. So this is kind of like delaying the order for the next time. And again, I can always spend 1 crystal shard to bump this action up. So that's what you can do at the marketplace. The actions at the Dark Alley are basically built around getting these special cards. So the first time you go to the Dark Alley, you can spend 1 energy to immediately take one of these cards of your choice. If you want to take additional cards, they cost 2 energy, and then you're allowed to take a look at, in both cases, you can draw the top 2, choose one, put the other one back. So this just means it costs a little bit more to do that. You can do this as many times as you can afford. This is just the first time. And then in this case, you're allowed to spend 1 energy to cycle based on the arrows. The special effect that'll come into play during the next round, and that's kind of a global effect that changes the rules a little bit with the prophecy person over there, the fortune teller. So that's the way the Dark Alley works. Downtown is the place you're either going to get money from the bank, learn new spells, or hire new assistants. So if you hire an assistant, it costs 3 energy to do that. And basically you choose one of these. Let's say you want to choose either the mechanical assistant or just a standard one. Whatever you do, you go ahead and you pay the action by flipping that over to the X, and then you're going to grab that particular token and put it right up here, waiting for the end of the round, and then you'll get that person into your bank, or into your worker pool. So you don't have to pay wages on it this time. If you choose a spell, you basically will go ahead and choose one of the categories and look through that entire category of spells, and then you are able to just take one. You take one and you put it right on your area, unprepared, unprepped. You do not have to have the components for it yet. You also can take any spell that you want, but you cannot take spells that are above the current rank you're at. So the 16 rank spells, for instance, that are in the middle of this deck, you have to have 16 points. The 36, you have to have at least 36. So that's pretty standard. You'll remember that from playing this game. No big deal. And then finally, you can come over here and select one of these dice to get money from the bank. If you don't like your dice roll, you can spend 1 energy to re-roll, or you can spend 2 to just put it onto whatever you want. So that's a little bit of a helpful way to remove some of the randomness in there, in that mechanic. And that's the downtown space. The Academy space has a variety of different actions. First and foremost, the most simple ones are just placing one of your little miniature trick icons in either the classroom that are available, the classrooms that are available, or in the practice rooms that are available. When you do that, if you place them and there is a match, for instance, if you were to place a trick that was a level 1 trick that corresponded to, this type of, that's not out there right now, but this type of trick, let's say I had let's do a level 16, okay? And I was to place my specific icon. Let me find it here. If I was to place this on that level 16, in either spot, I would get this one-time bonus right there immediately. From there on in, for the rest of the time I leave it there, I get this particular situation. Now, the classrooms basically will say that you're not going to cast the trick anymore. If you do have the trick out in the area right there, you'll do it one more time, but then it gets removed from the game. And then each round, you're basically going to get the payout of the trick with some modifications. So you won't get all that's there. In this case, you're only going to get the crystal rewards plus an additional crystal, but you don't get any points, you don't get any money. So that's the way the classroom works. It's a way to get paid for the trick without having to actually cast it at the end of the round. The practice room basically enhances your trick, so it gives you some different things. So in this case, this gives you a +2 fame every time you cast the trick during your performances. You're going to look at what you've got here. In this case, instead of 5 fame and 5 money, I get 7 fame and 5 money for the casting of that trick because of this icon. And there's a variety of different icons that you can explore through the rules. Before these come out, though, you have to be able to build them. So to build them, they have to be in an open slot like this, and you choose a fame tier, but depending on what you are on the point track, of how much money you want to spend, and then you're going to get fame as a reward. So let's say I decided to do a 16 here. I could spend $5 to turn that into 3 fame. Then I would choose a level 16 practice room over here. I would get my choice, whichever one I wanted in there, and then I would place it over here on the board. Now, depending on the round I built it in, it would allow me to place some of my banners out there. So because this is round number 4, I would basically take 3 of these banners, and I would put them in these spots right over here, just like I had done over here on this spot. At the end of the game, the person with the most banners is going to score 8 points in the solo, the 2-player solo version. If you want to build those renovations, they cost you 2 energy. Again, you can bump up the energy by paying a crystal shard. To move into those locations when they're already there, you pay the amount of energy associated with the trick that you're moving. So in this case, if I wanted to move here and move that around, I would have to pay the 1 energy to do so. Also, when you go to this area, you can decide to take one of these powers. To do that, it costs 2. You take one of them. If you want to cycle them, you can spend 1 to get additional ones out of the pile, put it over here. When you do that, you're going to move this to your pile, and you're going to put it on one of these slots. When you put it on the slot, it's going to be a permanent enhancement for your apprentice throughout the rest of the game, and there's a variety of different ones. It may even power them up. So in this case, when I go ahead and place this right here, this will become a level 2. I will flip this over, and it's a level 2 now, or it's a 2 power guy. And then I will place this on here, effectively giving me this specific, I can't even speak, this specific situation for the rest of the game. So in this case, it would be anytime I play my apprentice to the workshop, I would get an additional 2 energy. But his wages then will increase depending on which one you just covered up. So now I'd have to, for instance, pay him $2 at the end of the turn instead of the 0. And that is how the Academy works. The final and most tricky of all of these things, no pun intended, is the theater. When you go to the theater, the easiest thing to do is basically place your magician in a slot, and that means that you are going to cast, or you're going to perform at the end of the round in the performance phase. Okay, depending on the slot you pick, you may qualify for some bonuses or penalties. The center spots have neither of each. The left spot will penalize you -1 fame, -1 money for each trick you perform. This one, if you're in the Sunday spot, will give you +1 fame, +1 money for each trick that you perform. Okay, so depending on where you put your first magician or your first assistant, that will determine what you're doing. Now, you're not allowed to do something like this where you're spreading out. Even I'll put it over here, so that's blocked. You're not allowed to build in one phase and then cast in another. Like, that's not allowed. You have to basically stay in the same spot. And once you put one in that location, that's yours for the rest of that character placement area. When you place your assistant down to prep tricks, okay, you will prep tricks according to this payout here. So in this case, it is 2 tricks. I can put them anywhere on these cards, or I can move tricks around. So if I wanted to, I could take this trick and move to this card, move this one to this card for this, or even move it in a different spot. When you prepare a trick, you have to make sure that the trick you're preparing, for instance, this one is a mechanical trick. This little mechanical symbol, if I can get it to focus here, this little mechanical symbol must be in one of these circles, that circle or that circle. It cannot be sitting out, pointing at a non-circle. So it's got to be kind of linked in so the show flows well. If you complete a link where there's a match, each player in that spot will gain a fame depending on the level of trick that was placed. And you as a you gain the fame, they will not, but each of you will get a crystal if there's a crystal in there. You gain the fame according to what level you placed, okay? So that's how the placement works for setting your tricks up. Now, in order to actually perform the tricks as the magician, you are going to choose one of these cards and perform all the tricks on the card. That means that each person is going to get their specific fame, money, and crystal payouts, regardless of whether it's you or not. Those are going to be paid out according to the pay ratios on these different tricks. And after each of those happen, you as a magician will get some bonuses depending on who you have here. First of all, you'll get bonuses for existing links. That'll be 1 point per link. Then, for instance, in this case, I have this particular assistant. He would then allow me to get $3 for just being here in this performance. Finally, I would go ahead and I would get any special bonuses that are listed on the bottom of this card. For instance, if I perform this trick, I would remove these from the trick and put them back into the AIs would go back onto his spot, specifically being prepared to do the trick again, and yours would go back into your supply because you have to prep your tricks. So that is kind of how that phase works. It's a little bit complex and confusing. Refer to the rules as need be. And that was the casting phase. I kind of skipped around there. That was part of the casting phase as far as how you actually cast. So I prep the tricks in the first place. That happens when you're placing characters. But the casting phase does not actually happen until you have finished the place characters, and then you go to the performance phase. Here I said casting phase. Performance phase. Okay, finally, I didn't talk about the workshop. When you place a character of yours in the workshop, that is how you're going to either prepare tricks, you can enhance that with crystals, or do something specific based on these different assistants that you have. So in this case, you can move your components back and forth in the assistant board, and depending on the other assistants you might have throughout the game, they will allow you to do different things. So in this case, you're allowed to switch the special trick in the trick slot over here, and in that trick slot, if you remember, you get an extra additional trick preparation token when you put it in there, and then this assistant allows you to basically get an additional assistant here with the glove, the standard assistant. You can purchase that assistant throughout the game for one energy. And basically what happens is if this is over here, you would move one of your existing ones for 1 energy to this board, and that person would now no longer require wages. If you have picked this up at the beginning of the game, it starts with both of those tokens. The final thing to talk about is when you're using the contraption expansion, when you put someone in this location, that is when you are going to pay the appropriate amount of money to buy a contraption. You can always buy a contraption regardless of what the situation is, as long as you can afford with the money and the activation energy. When you buy a contraption, you put it in face up so that it is ready to go, and you can use it at the beginning of your turn up until the point where you're about to place or assign your first characters. You're not allowed to use it after that. So the point of the contraption is to either get you money or different things depending on what the actual specifics are. You can look in the rule book, but when you use that, you flip it over showing that it's exhausted, and then depending if you have a full load of crystals here, this will refresh at the end of the round. If you don't, for instance, if I had purchased this one in a previous round and exhausted it, and when you exhaust it, you get whatever it says here. I only have one of the 2 crystals required for that spot, so this would not refresh, but this one would. And that is how these little sideboards work. And they have different effects depending on which ones you have in the game. Okay, so once you've done all that stuff, once you've placed your characters, once you've finished your performance phase, and you've actually done everything that you need to, you go into this end of turn phase. The first thing you're going to do is pay your wages. To pay your wages, you're going to look at each of the characters that was used, basically that has a card assigned to it, but the character is not sitting there. Okay, if you sat him there, you basically decide not to use him, you don't have to pay the wage. But in this situation right here, I would owe $1 for him, $1 for him, and then $2 for her, and nothing for him because he did not go out. So I would have to pay those wages out of my bank. If I don't pay the wage, for every coin that I don't pay, I lose 2 fame. So that's no good at all. After paying wages, then my orders arrive. So I'm sorry, then I return characters. So I take all of these characters off the board, put them back in my slots where they belong. So the magician goes back here, and the this assistant, which I covered up in a previous turn, will go under there. But they all come off the board, including the AIs. Then after that, the orders arrive. So with the orders arriving, I look over at this spot right here and I see, okay, whatever is in this slot is going to replace here. Whatever is here is going to replace there. So this is going to replace this particular one, and this is going to go back into the supply, and that kind of sets it up for a new shop in the next turn. Then I'm going to move the performance cards. So whatever performance cards are out here, they're all going to slide over one spot. Now, in the case here, this one slid off. This trick, because I didn't cast it, just goes away. I lost it. If it was the AI, he would get his payout -1 coin, -1 fame for each trick that's on here. So that's a little bit of a helper for him. Then you reveal the next theater location, and then that's in play. Finally, we're going to remove posters. So if you had advertised, that would come off the board. And we're going to move the turn counter. So the turn counter is going to move up to the next spot. We're going to move the prophecies. So if there's a prophecy here, after the first turn, this one would go ahead and make its way into there, becoming effective. These would slide like this, and then we draw another prophecy out of the bag and put it right there. Then, if you have used any special assignment cards, these get discarded, you or the AI. So this would go back at the bottom of the deck under here, and so would mine over here. So these would be discarded. They're a one-time use situation. Now, of course, you remember if you use them, they're going to give you whatever it says on the card, or you can use it for the +1, either way. But they're a one-time deal. You put them back when you're done onto the pile. And then you're also going to take all the top cards and cycle them one at a time just to the bottom so that you get a new card up for the next round. And that is the end of the end turn phase. So that covers all the different phases that are going on in this game. When you're done, you look at the scoring situation. Now, depending on which version you played, if you played the base game, you would use this. If you played the Dark Alley, you would use this. If you decided to play with the Academy, then you're going to be using this particular situation, the Dark Alley and the Academy. So these tell you what you get at the end of the game. So for instance, in this case, there's a max 20 on all these different categories. You're going to get up to 20 points depending on how many how many crystal shards you have, up to 20 points if you have multiples of 3 coins, 2 points for each special card you have that you didn't spend. So for instance, if I had one of those special cards in my deck, but I never spent it and never used it, then I would be able to score 2 points by just having it left over. And then finally, for the end of your tricks, if you have some of these big boy tricks down here that have a bonus, not that one, pardon me, this one right here, you're going to be able to take advantage of whatever that specific end game bonus is. The AI will score points for these. They won't get this situation. The points are dependent on the specifics for the level of play that you're playing, and it shows you right here what you're doing. The AI also scores 1 point for every fame. And one thing I didn't mention before is at the end of the turn, when you're paying wages, the AI will spend 10 coins to get a certain number of points depending on the specifics of what you're actually doing in regards to the level of play here. So on the easy mode, it's 2. On the normal, it's 3. And on the hard, it's 3. Person with the most points wins. Oh, and also you're going to get a paid amount depending on the Academy. So whoever's got the most of these banners in this situation where it actually looks like the red player, so the AI has that, he will get 8 points and the other player will get nothing. Now, one of the things I didn't go over with the AI is that this back of the sheet is pretty much indispensable for knowing what to do. Each of their actions are going to be somewhat different depending on where they go. Depending on how much energy, it will show you, like I said before, how many times you do things, but you've got to really follow these directions to know exactly what is going to happen and then what are their different preferences when the time comes. And each of them are completely different in a lot of ways, so it's best for you just to put this out, and when you go through your play, just follow the instructions here. There's a lot of little nitnoid things there that won't add anything to this video if I try to explain them all. But that's a key part of the play. Finally, if you decided to use your contraption phase, don't forget your scoring, or your contraptions bonus. Your scoring is a little bit different at the end. You score 1 point for every 3 shards that you have, but he scores just 1 point for every 1 shard, so he gets a bonus. And that's the whole game.
So that was a detailed explanation of how to play against the AI with all of the expansions loaded in. I hope it was helpful. I may have made some mistakes. I try not to in my rules, but if I do, please put them in the comments below, and I will update my comments accordingly on the actual YouTube page or in Board Game Geek where I post these videos. I really hope you enjoyed this rule speed through. Again, my name is John LaRuffa. I love doing these videos. Please like and subscribe because it really helps me a lot, and I'll see you next time.